Welcome to the AVID 2022.10 free webinar. My name is Tibor Spiegel. This is December 2nd, 2022, and you are sitting in on a free AVID webinar. If you have not worked with AVID before, the simple question is, which AVID do you want to use? Which AVID do you want to pay for? And how does it differentiate? The one I'm using is the Ultimate. The process is presuming that you will have all the external drives, monitors, everything hooked up, connected to the ecosystem, let's call it the computer system. And when the AVID Media Composer, in this case Ultimate, opens up, it sends out messages saying who is connected, what's connected, recognize all the components. You'll notice that I have activated Symphony, Newscutter, Phrase Find, and Script Sync. The Phrase Find is going to be the fun that I'm going to talk to you about as we go along. So when you open up Media Composer, there are a couple of ways of creating a project. One of them is activating the new project dropdown, and then you would have a choice of projects that are based on PAL, NTSC, 1287, 20, 19, 20, 1080, and so on. But the new version, which is 2022.10, has an option where you can pick Choose for Me. In this scenario, when you activate Choose for Me, the dialog is going to be acting the following. So when you create one, you will notice that from the start point, there will be two bins active to start with. One is going to be for the clips, which is untitled clips, and one for the sequences. Now, when you go into the clips and open up the clips, you will notice that there is indication telling you drag from source browser to add clips to the project. And it also tells you in the timeline, drag clips here to start editing. That is a very nice addition for novices who are coming over from either Premiere or Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve. The other tools that I have in the 2022.10, one of them is very important as far as keyboard setup. So in the user settings in the keyboards, there are keyboards for the Resolve. Okay, so the Resolve keyboard is now showing up. You also have a default keyboard that is the Premiere Pro. Let's find that. And these are the two additional ones that are really helpful for people who are migrating or getting introduced to the world of AVID Media Composer. With that being said, let's just go back to where we were. Command-Shift-W, leave the project that we were automatically kicking in. Project is a show, documentary, feature, promo, bumper, teaser, YouTube video, anything that you can identify as something that you put together. In AVID Media Composer, the projects are assigned based on three different elements: frame rate, aspect ratio, and raster size. If you put stuff on social media, they may have different aspect ratios, they might have different pixels, but right now I am opening up a new project with 1920 1080, and it is telling me that I have choices of frame rate. So this is where you decide what your final is. The reason why this is important is because in AVID, you have to make that decision early on at the beginning. You can change raster sizes, but the frame rate pretty much is locked down at the beginning. Now, I do have some projects that I cut together for you. So to expedite this whole process, I'm going to switch you over to projects. Remember, the project is just a gathering of how material is assembled. So how do you bring the stuff in? Well, the finding presumes that you're going to bring things into somewhere. So the first step generally would be that you open up a new bin, and the new bin is a storage environment. So I'm going to call it storage. By definition, it's an environment that is very similar to the concept of a folder, except the folder in AVID is a higher level. So in this case, I have a bin, and it comes from the history of AVID 30 years ago. Used as a non-linear environment for people who were cutting commercials. And commercials back 30 years ago were cut on 35mm film. So you had the film, it was developed, it was put on rods over a bin, and they were hanging clips. That's why we have the terminology. The material that you have is in a bin. That's why the bin comes in. So if you are inside the bin material for the webinar, right-click on it, drop down, and there is a source browser option, and there is an import option. The difference between the two is that the source browser just links it the import translates it. So it transcodes it from camera speak, let's use the terminology, to a AVID speak. In this case, I'm just going to look for source material, and the source browser is going to say, okay, go on to the ecosystem. Ecosystem is your computer. So I have a whole bunch of drives here available for you guys to play with. I'm going to pick some footage that I identified and I put it into a folder. So if you have cards individually, obviously it's much easier. If you have knowledge where the stuff is, it's much easier to, instead of doing the browser, wait a minute, I need to find it, what it is. I know what it is on the desktop. So why am I struggling with this? Not a choice, it is just, but it's actually a choice, not a advice, is just opinion. I said, maybe it's easier. So I am suggesting that if you are trying to link material, instead of just going through the source browser, maybe minimize your real estate. And let's say that you know where your material is. So for example, I have a folder. Let's think of it as a card. And from there, I have footage that I used or I was shooting. And these are created in a specific camera file format. So one more time, if you know where your stuff is going to go, material for the webinar, if you know where it's going to come from, let's imagine that this rock climber is the card. So you double click, open it up, and you can visually check and see if the monitor plays it. So in this case, I'm going to check out, come on now, on the operating system that the material is watchable. It is not corrupted, it is watchable. So here's how the linking works. It's so magical. I'm still amazed by how they came up with this concept. Grab a whole bunch of them, let's say so. And instead of dragging them into the bin, because that would make it translate from camera speak to AVID speak, holding down Option, Alt on the Windows, I should be able to link them. Ding, that's it, they're linked, done. So now you can start editing. Essentially, you drag all the material that you want to work with. You can drag more, obviously. It's not limited to a certain number. Option, Alt brings it in. So now all the clips are in that I'm working with. The warning here is that if you take this folder offline, delete it from the desktop or delete it from wherever you had it, the computer in the AVID environment running will say it's offline because it's not connected. So the handshake is lost. So with this, let's say that we have the material in, and if you open up your environment, you have 3 different ways of looking at it. When I say 3 different ways of looking at it: text view, frame view, script view. The text view is the one that gives you information about the name, the file size, date of recording, and all the rest of the stuff. And if it is not big enough for you, meaning the fonts, you can always say to the window, please make the fonts bigger, let's say about 20. So now it's easier to watch. The problem that some people run into is when you have real estate limited, 13, 15, maybe 17-inch laptop, how do you deal with the small little kind of compressed environment? Well, say hello to the tear off. There we go. So we tore it off. Well, it's not call it, they disconnected it. So the magnetic connection is now not there. So it's not magnetically, it's not floating freely. Change it to the picture view. And picture view is known also as a frame view. So if the frames are not big enough, Command L, Control L on the Windows increases them or decreases them in size. The issue is that I'm running into, if I increase them, I don't see the rest of them. Where are the rest of them? Meaning the clips. So right click, drop down, align everybody and fill the window and fill the window. And now the window is filled. This white wireframe actually helps you if you have a smaller window. You see the smaller window, I can move around the wireframe. The wireframe, that white is moving around the window. And that kind of, for some people, is distracting. I turn it off myself, but that's my own personal choice. So you know that you have clips. These clips can be organized in many different ways. You can pick a clip 1, 2, 3. So these 3 clips will be the story. Okay. And you are able to manipulate that multiple ways. How so? Make the windows a little bit smaller, meaning the frame size, Command K, Control K. And I'm going to get you 6 shots picked from a group of shots. There we go. Move things away. I'm going to move things away. These are the 6 shots I'm going to use. 1, 2, 3. Everything is in my way. If it's on the right side, move it away. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These 6 shots starting from the upper left hand coming down diagonally
are arranged in that particular fashion. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If these 6 shots are the story that you want to put together, grab them, lasso them, and throw them in the timeline like I just did. Okay. And now the story is done. What do you mean done? Let's minimize things. Or if you want to put this back to where it came from, holding Option Alt on the Windows, put it back, and now you have a story. The story contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shots. That's as easy as you can get. Clearly, if you are a serious editor, and I'm not going to try to quantify what a serious editor is, you should be able to pick individual shots and say, hey, left double click, put it into the source monitor, or you can drag it physically into the source monitor. The source monitor is a cool way to organize material or to bring in up to 20 clips. And if it is more than 20, the last one will be kicked out and the new one takes over. So if you have a whole bunch of them, let's say, bring in number, I select all of these on the left side, drag them in, ding, 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 ding. And do I have more than 20? I don't think so. 2, 4, 6. So you can actually have up to 20 of these. The reason why that's cool is if you're cutting a short story and you only use 20 clips, you can bring them in individually and you can check them, and by upper left hand drop down, select which is the one you want to look at. But as I just demonstrated, if you know what the sequence of the shots is based on the storyboard, let me upper right hand corner clear the monitor. Let me clear the source monitor so there is nothing confusing. There is no confusion here. So go back again to the picture. Oh, I don't see them all. Well, right click in the gray area. We did it earlier. Align everybody. Fill the window. And if you want to tear it down, grab next to the X, tear it down. So now I have the full window. And my material is going to be organized, let's say 8 clips at this point. There's a sequence, it's called untitled. Oh, how do I know it's a sequence? I know it's a sequence because the icon is different. Ah, there we go. See, if I want to kill the original sequence that I created just a minute ago, highlight, you see the safety doesn't default to delete. You have to physically make a choice. So now you know that you deleted it. Going back into the picture view, also known as the frame view, pick 1 shot, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, they are randomly picked. You have to accept that it's just not artistic or creative or nothing that makes sense. But the concept is explained left to right, top to bottom, or in this case, it's better because the diagonal shows me. So I select all of those, meaning the clips, drag them into timeline, the story is put together. Done. When you're done with that, you created a brand new sequence, which by definition is called untitled. I generally like to put the date on it, and I will call it Friday, December 2. And the time is, I'm going to use military time, 13:20. So I know that I created that particular show, that particular sequence, that particular story on December 2nd, Friday at 13:20. Does that make sense to you? If it doesn't, don't use it, use something else. So if you double click on the sequence, it is in the blue monitor. We call it the record monitor. The real estate management. Oh, I need to put it back. Sure, put it back. Holding down Option would be the way to go there. So now we have a story. How do you manipulate the story? Well, if you're an editor, if you come from Final Cut, Premiere, or DaVinci, you know that there are ways to shorten things, but this is what AVID does, and this is amazing to me how nobody else is kind of jumping on this bandwagon. You notice that in my timeline, I have different numbers assigned to each of the clips, suggesting that is the duration of the clip. But I don't necessarily need that all the time. How can I change that? Bottom left-hand corner, there is a fast menu, and in the fast menu, you have a clip text tool that can turn that information off or on. If the name of the clip is irrelevant to me, I go and turn that name because it wastes too much real estate, but I definitely need a duration because I need to show you how to make each of those clips 5 seconds. Interesting. Can I cut to music? Oh, I can do that too. So let's just, you and I agree that we're going to be using the duration of it, showing the duration. So now you have a question And this is something that I've seen a lot of editors who come over from different environments. Can I see the picture in the timeline? Sure, AVID gives you this option. Bottom left-hand corner, hamburger. Well, we don't call it hamburger, but for fun, we always use, if you're hungry for knowledge, you go for the hamburger. That's where the fast menu is. So now look at this, and it says the clip frames. So to me, this is a really cool way if I'm doing graphics, but a lot of editors use it all the time. I don't like it because it is a strain on the RAM. Do you have any sound that you can see? I don't see any sound. What do you mean don't see any sound? A waveform. So you have a choice opening up the track control panel to turn on the waveform or turn it off. The waveform at this point is addressed by fast menu. Look at this. The audio data is per track. So the individual track is going to be turned on and off by you clicking on seeing the waveform or not. The waveform, by definition, is not reflecting the volume really precisely. Why? If I hold down Command Option and I go deeper, you can see my density of the waveform is much more thicker, therefore suggesting that it's louder. It's not. By design, the AVID people said, well, you know, if you want to see it thicker, yeah, but if you just want to see where the spikes are, you would be able to see them much more clearly. And if you zoom into the timeline, which is Command right bracket, zooms in, zooms out. Command / shows you the entire timeline. So now my scenario and the scenario that I was suggesting is going to cut down each of these shots to 5 seconds. So my question is, how do I move 5 seconds into the story? If you have dealt with the full-size keyboard, which is what I'm using, it's easy, it's simple, it's logical. How so? If I go to the beginning of the story and I type in +500, the playhead moves down 5 seconds. Essentially, from that point on, I'm going to cut off everything until the next. And it seems to me kind of too many things going on. So you know what? Why don't I turn off the clip frames? Why don't I turn off the waveform so I don't get confused? And now I know that I have an 18-second shot, a 13-second, 13:07, 31, 21, 13, 14, and 44. So I'm going to cut down each of them to 5 seconds. How did I suggest to go about it? Go to the first frame, type in +500. I'm using the numeric keyboard. And when I hit enter, the playhead goes down 5 seconds. And if I use a tool that is a tail, it cuts off from the playhead to the tail, which is the coolest thing ever. I'm going to cut off the 13 seconds, again, +500. Cut off 5 seconds and +500. Again, move it 5 seconds forward, cutting it off. I could theoretically cut it off live and do a edit if I assign these buttons, the top and the tail, to a keyboard. I'm cutting it down slowly, and I'm reaching a scenario where I have 8 5-second shots. And the 5-second shots would be the story that I'm going to start to work with. So these are 5-second shots. You can see clearly they are 5 seconds. If I play out the story, let me see if I can play it out full screen. The full screen playout is Command-Shift-F, Control-Shift-F on a Windows. Let's see if it works. And I have the guy climbing, 2, 3, 4, 5, cuts it to the next shot. Shot is moving, and that's it, probably the version of the shot. So some of the shots are more interesting, some of them are less, but your job is obviously at the stage when you select these things to define which shots are going to be used. So with that, let's you and I introduce the concept of the phrase find. I said something about the tool when we opened up Media Composer, and I said, in Media Composer, my version contains the phrase find. That is what the ultimate does. What is the phrase find? Coolest thing ever. I had brought in a environment that is a jacuzzi, and I have these clips. I'm going to show you what they are. Open up the whole bin, drag it off. The guys that I have in this show are delivering a jacuzzi to a location, and there is some confusion who does what. So let me show you what is transpiring. Command L brings the pictures bigger as the maximum you can have on this resolution, and by right-click drop down, fill the window. So now I'm going to randomly look at some shots. You could theoretically play the shot while it's in the bin. Hit the space bar, it should play it.
One, two, three. Okay, got it.
May I presume that when I brought up the volume, you can see a shot that is active, and you can hear the girl doing the clapper, or call it, take one, take two, whatever it is, and you will see the picture.
7, slide 31, take 1.
Okay, if that is not big enough, what did we do earlier? We dragged the shot into the source monitor so we see it bigger. So that's one way of utilizing the source monitor.
7, slide 31, take 1.
So she's calling it out what the slate is, and she runs out. So now the action is going on. But because AVID has been around for over 30 years, AVID said, well, sometimes people see a picture and they said, instead of putting in the source monitor, we're going to see the full screen. Holding down Option, look at this. You make the floating source monitor huge. It's still in source monitor. Why? Because the green line is there, but now you can actually scroll through it and find out when the girl walks away with the slate, and she does the slate, looks around, audience is gone, hit the space bar, plays it.
Here we go, went to the car, and action.
Pack it up, boys.
Huh?
He doesn't want it.
He doesn't want it.
That's what he said.
But it's already off the truck.
Well, put it.
So now the guys are arguing about what to do. Now remember, there was one word, one instruction, pack it up, boys. So if you remember, and if you know when you were recording what was being said, you can tell the computer, use the phrase find to find the phrase, find the word, or find the statement that they make and put it into source monitor. This is how that works. This is so cool. I'm still amazed by how they came up with this technology. It's actually voice recognition, artificial intelligence. So if I say, find where in this story they are saying, pack it up. I just showed you a clip. No. Go into the edit. If you have the ultimate, you activate find. And this is where you pay serious money if you're working with multilingual. There are different languages, and the languages are listed as Brazilian, European, French, Spanish, and a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to stick to English because this is what these guys are using, ABCD English. And I'm going to ask the computer to find pack it up. Pack, let's type it in properly, pack it up. Does it matter if he says pack it up, boys, or not? I'm not sure yet. So in the phrase find, I'm not finding it. I'm using phrase find. See if it finds that clip. Place find, ding, 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 looks for it, phrase find. There we go. And it gives me a percentage of accuracy, saying that it's about 82% sure that that's where the guys are saying pack it up. So I double click on that clip, watch what happens. Puts it into a source monitor, hello, puts it into a source monitor. And in the source monitor, it is telling me, let me see if I'm correct.
Pack it up, boys.
Okay, so that's one angle. So it looks like that there's multiple ways of finding the solution. So there is one version that says 732.3. Okay, what's 736.2? Look at the percentage, it's 72%. Maybe the pronunciation is a little bit different, but anything under 65, somewhere, that's where the break line, because the do and the door and do can be misunderstood. My point is that let's see if the angle that 736.3 is a different one. Double click. Come on now. And it says,
Pack it up, boys.
got it. So now we understand that the phrase find is a very smart tool, presuming that the material, the picture and sound is synced. Otherwise, how would the computer know it? It would just find a sound file. So the phrase find is a cool tool. I just wanted to bring it to attention because a lot of people say, what's the difference between the Media Composer and Ultimate? This is a major difference. So if I have a story, which in this case, I will have a story put together for you. Here are the 5-second shots. How many? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if you have a need to have some kind of transition, there are multiple transitions available. The simplest transition, guys, the simplest transition is a horizontal. We call it a horizontal transition because it's going from left to right. And generally, they would be either in a quick transition, dissolves, film dissolves, fades from, fade to color, or dip to color. So if it dips to color, by definition, it will say, I don't have any handles on one side. But I can give you a starting 24 frames. Why? Because the 1 second 24 frame is the default setup. So if I want to have that effect added, let's see how it looks. So it has a 1 second 24 frame dip to black. I want to have it apply to the entire show. So here's how that works. I mark in, O mark out. You are familiar with the concept of in and out, in and out. So if I have a long story, I can select a section of it. In this case, the story contains a whole bunch of edits in between. And I put a blanket on the beginning of the first edit, and the last edit is passed. So if I activate again, my friend, the quick transition, the dialog now identifies that there is an apply to all transitions into out, which is just only showing up when you have the into out. And I will have the not dissolve, I'm going to have the dip to color apply to all of them. And in this case, Command S saves things, Command Shift F full screen on a Mac, Control Shift F on Windows. And now I'm going to play it out by using your effect that we just applied, which is a dip to black every 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. So now you understand how the effect is going to be added. Because we need to move along, I had some preset sequences cut together for you. So we covered the concept of how to link it. We covered the concept how to start the project. We covered the concept of how you can use a storyboard to throw clips into the timeline and create a story. Why we call it timeline? Timeline is the place where you manipulate, but it's a sequence. It's a sequence of shots, and you can call it documentary, feature, promo, whatever you want, but it's essentially a sequence of shots. That's why we call them untitled sequence when they start. Anyways, so I have some stuff that I cut together for you. Here is a opening sequence. Hello, there we go. In this one, I had put together something unique. I colored each of those clips so I know how much of the yellow I'm using, how much of the purple, and the rest of the stuff, because in this scenario, I am paying for renting or using footage, or I'm required to use certain footage. So this is how that works. I assign each of those clips a color. How did I assign it? Well, first of all, I'm looking for where is this clip living. So anytime if you are a forensic editor, can you figure out what's going on? Can you do some fixing? So the first thing you look for is, where do these clips come from? You park on one of those clips, in this case, the first clip. And if you right click onto the number of that video track, it should lock it up or link it up or identify where it comes from. It is called match frame. So it match frames that footage. And that footage tells me it's R0706. Doesn't mean anything to me. Where does it live? What bin does it live in? Let's you and I find it. There we go. And it highlights it. So this is the clip that ended up in the story. That's the green. And for some reason, somebody says, you know what? Can you change the color of that clip? Not the video, but the color that identifies that clip. Right click, drop down. And I'm going to change it to a deep blueberry blue. Watch what happens in the timeline. Boom, the timeline now shows that I have that blue. If I use it multiple times, it would show up. When I say multiple times, I can bring that clip in one place here. Watch it, please. This is how you bring in material. Green is the source. Blue is the destination. And I'm going to select a section to bring it over. Right? So now I had the deep blue once, twice. If I bring it in one more time, being silly, the third time, I have it 3 times. And the producer says, no. That color is only used up someplace else. Can you change it to something different? Yes. Wild, right click, drop down, and you change it to, let's say, a very nice orange, because I don't have orange. I have some orange. Okay, make it like a nice ice blue. There we go. So this color coding for you, if you're doing reality shows or if you're doing dynamic interviews, you can show how many times did you use one person, other person. The name has nothing to do with it, it's the color coding. And this color coding only shows up in the timeline if you define that the clip colors will be the sources. Otherwise, it doesn't show up. Otherwise, everything is blue because the general color of the track is that. This to me is really magical. Other applications work on it. and they're kind of catching up with things. But AVID has this for a long time. So if you're do reality show or documentary, anything like that, where you need to know how many times you use one person or one shot or segment from one shot, this is my way of going about it. One more time, flip color. And the colors that you assign in the color in the bin source now identify. Let's go shut this, not down, but clean things up and move along. My sequence is living somewhere. I have no idea where it lives. What do you mean? I have no idea. Well, you saw me earlier on the bottom left-hand corner of the source monitor, but in this case, a record monitor, I'm going to use the find bin. There we go. Opens it up. There we go. It highlights it. Last time, if you want to find where the sequence lives, if it's in the record monitor, you click on the find bin, identifies it. Let's do the horizontal effects. I did a whole bunch of horizontal effects, and these are nice and flashes, specific flash. Watch the show. And there's some music also. I'm going to bring the music down. So parking onto the transition. In order to change that black, you have to activate your effect mode. And in effect mode, I will park on an effect. In this case, the effect needs to be identified. Here's how the identification goes. There we go. I click on the color. That is by definition black. Double click on it and change it. So if I pick the color, I'm going to change it to, let's say, yellow. So yellow flash is the one that's going to be adapted to color. Very simple, very easy, very practical. The presumption is that you were able to adjust it. So there are also segment effects, and this is something quickly that we at this point demonstrate. So if I want to have a color of one of those clips changed, for example, here's my color change. You remember I told you at the beginning that I'm using the media composer that is the symphony. So it has the symphony option. And this is a perfect demonstration where the color cuts in. Open up the color and make the adjustments using the curves. If you never dealt with the colors, there are multiple ways of doing this, but the fastest and the easiest is using a curve. Brighten up the element and do the contrast and make it warmer, add some red to it and take away the blue. So now it looks like it's a hot day somewhere in a place where it's a hot day. Command S, Command Shift F, full screen, look at the picture. And it's a hot day. So that's how you manipulate the concept of color. Now, because you want to have the same color across the whole show, Command Y adds another track of video. By definition, there are some preset colors, and the preset colors would be in the image family, and they will be called lookup tables, L-U-T, LUT. So you can assign a LUT. What kind of LUT? Well, you can grab it, put it onto the upper track, make sure the monitor is turned on to the video too. And inside the LUT, if you want to change not just one clip, but anybody and everybody below, activate your effect mode, and in the LUT, pull up the one that you want to have work with. So open up the available LUTs. And hello. Come on now. There we go. And change it to, let's say, Ace is sharper. Everything is sharper. So if I did my job right and everything works right, it should be sharper or phase out. Everything is hazy. Like there was a series on HBO called True Detective. Everything was hazy. Without the effect, with the effect. So this is just a segment effect that is applied to everybody. And if I want to make it much simpler, make everybody black and white. This is the last 3 minutes of the seminar, webinar. Please watch it. You grab a color effect. No, a color correction. No, color effect is the way to go about it because that's the fastest and easiest because you don't need to adjust it. You just pick it right away. How? Watch it, please. I'm just going to bring the saturation down, which is making it black and white. Everything is black and white. Maybe add some contrast. Or if you want to do sepia tone, which is a very popular choice, make it old looking, push the red, take away the blue. The entire show is like sepia tone, some people call it. And if you're done with it, look at it, the entire show is sepia tone. Command S, Control S on a Windows, Command Shift full screen, here's the show. Now the sepia tone might be too bright. essentially you are adding a attachment to the Now, when everything is done and you need to put it someplace, you need to sell it, you need to demonstrate it, send it to a festival, or just put it on YouTube or any of the other social media, here are the steps. Presumption is obviously that everything you did up to this point is okay and you will like it. 2, you right-click in the record monitor and there should be an export option. The export option lets you define what location. I'm going to put it on the desktop so you can find it. And I will name it December 2 webinar. Click on the options, and in the options, you define what is that you are sending out. Generally, what you are working for or toward is a MOV, QuickTime Movie, or MPEG-4. So if you send out MPEG-4, it tells you what is going to be the aspect ratio, where it's going to go, what is the frame rate, and so on. And if you want to save that as your own template, you can still save it as your own template. So you save it. What's it called? Webinar, horizontal FX. No, call it December 2 webinar. MPEG-4, save it. Not yet, because I don't know what the setting is. MPEG-4, there we go. Save it, and now it's going to go webinar. And when I save it, ding, 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 it will take me what, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1, and essentially I should be able to find it on the desktop, which I believe is here, webinar MPEG-4, and that can be posted onto YouTube, Vimeo, social media. You can send it to me as a file. How big is it? I have no idea until I do a Command-I, Control-I, gets the information. And it seems to be telling me it's about 302.6 megabytes. If you have been patient with watching me what I did, I hope that you got something out of this. And if nothing else, you learned something new. So I hope this worked out for you, or it works out for you. And we are Future Media Concept. If you need additional information, you can talk to the guys. Go FMC Dell Ceremony. So thank you very much for attending this webinar. Happy holidays. Stay safe, stay healthy. See you in the future, hopefully.